Chapter 379. Elaine did not know that she was not only pushing her daughter into a fire pit at this time, but she was also pushing herself into one. Elaine was only hoping that Emma could clear up all the misunderstandings that she had with Albert, and she also hoped that Emma would be able to develop a good impression of Albert at this time. If everything proceeded as planned, then Emma would finally divorce the useless piece of trash, Alex, and then she could marry Albert instead. Emma could not help but feel a little annoyed and frustrated as soon as she was pushed into the villa by her mother. She knew that her mother was a materialistic person who had no morals at all, but she thought that Elaine would have a limit. However, she could not believe that her mother would actually gang up with someone else to deceive her. This made her feel really disappointed. At this time, Emma turned around because she wanted to leave the villa immediately. Unexpectedly, Albert closed the door before locking it behind him. Emma glared at Albert with a cold expression on her face as she said, "Albert Warner, please let me out now." "Emma, since you're already here, why do you want to leave so soon? Why don't you take a seat so that we can have a chat instead?" Albert stood in front of Emma as he stared at her with fiery and intense eyes. He looked at her slender and long legs, her slender waist, her perfect figure, and her beautiful face, and he could not help but feel very excited. This woman really exudes charm all over her, and his heart was already beating frantically because of her. Emma looked at him with disgust before she said coldly, "I have nothing to chat with you, so please let me go now." At this time, Elaine quickly spoke up and said, "Emma, why do you have such a bad attitude? Just sit down and have a good chat with Albert." Emma replied coldly, "I have nothing to say to him." After that, Emma pointed a finger at Albert before she said in a warning tone, "Albert, please get out of my way. I want to leave now." Albert looked at Emma with a cold expression on his face before he suddenly laughed out loud. At the same time, the expression on his face suddenly turned very cold and sinister as he said, "Emma, who do you think you are? The reason I've called you here today is because I feel you're good enough for me. Stop playing hard to get or you're really going to suffer later." The expression on Emma's face changed immediately and she asked, "Albert, what are you going to do?" "What am I going to do?" Albert laughed before he said in a nasty tone, "Of course I want to do you." As soon as she heard his words, Emma was shocked and she felt extremely terrified. She wanted to run out of the villa immediately. However, before she could even take a step forward, Albert grabbed hold of her wrist and she could not move at all. Emma yelled angrily at this time, "Let go of me." Albert stared at her pretty face before he smiled and said, "Emma, you're really getting more and more beautiful every day. I really wish that I could just make love to you right now." At this time, he looked at Emma's beautiful face and her perfect figure, and the look on his face changed immediately.